My name's Eva Beylin. I work at The Graph on ecosystem strategy and EIR. And I want to talk today about why The Graph is so valuable and how The Graph is actually making decentralized applications possible. So a few facts about building applications. Oops. Is you have to query data. And basically, basically, you have to query data anytime you want to show anything really in an application. And usually when someone's building a Web 2 application, they're building an indexer, they're running their own server and their own database, and they're indexing that data themselves. And similarly for applications built on Web 3, so any blockchain today, usually dApp developers will build their own indexer and run their own server. But what we quickly realized is that's actually not sustainable. It's not really decentralized. It creates a lot of security risk for app users, even investors in DeFi apps, or those that are using DeFi apps to invest. And it creates a lot of centralization risk around a single front-end application versus actually fulfilling this decentralized vision. It also requires the engineers to write a lot of code, which is something that we don't necessarily want going forward. And so I think Vitalik summarizes the vision best. And so people who say full decentralization is overkill, you only need non-custodial, are missing the full point. A decentralized or serverless application is valuable because it gives users the confidence that it will always be there, so you can safely build on top of it. And that's exactly what The Graph is building. So The Graph is an indexing and querying layer for blockchain data for open and decentralized APIs. We're agnostic to any blockchain, although our contracts are built on Ethereum and currently we support EVM-based chains. We're actively expanding to support different blockchains so any developer can query any blockchain data and easily build an application. So when I think about the Graph vision, my background is economics, I'm a data analyst, and so the developer use case is exciting to me. Yes, we can build serverless dApps, and that's awesome for me as a user as well. But what's most interesting to me as a consumer is that now we can have access to APIs in an open market that we couldn't before. And so, for example, if I'm trying to do analysis on market data, I have to either pay a Bloomberg or I have to pay another gateway to access those APIs. And they are also paying other centralized entities like an AWS or whoever their server or database providers might be. And what the Graph does is sort of disbands those monopolies and allows anybody to use the APIs and also anybody to benefit. So people can uphold the network and actually earn from it by contributing to the decentralized data network. And so by enabling a market where people can actually earn from the querying that occurs, so the querying of data from blockchain, that isn't only earned by one centralized party, we can actually create this decentralized market where anybody can participate, even if you're not a developer. Oops, oh my God. Thanks everyone for being patient with my illiteracy. So the Graph vision more technically is creating better developer experience. So by not having to build your own proprietary code to build your own indexer, that saves a lot of engineering time. And it also saves sort of this like intangible engineering time of, how long does it take them to maintain the code? What about things like block reorgs? And all of that is handled when you just build a subgraph. By enabling serverless applications, we can actually ensure apps are decentralized. Really, I don't think you can say an application is decentralized unless it's serverless, because then it's relying on the server of the developer who built that front end for everybody to have access to it. Versus if you can build these open APIs and allow front ends to run on them, then we're not actually relying on any single user anymore or single point of failure. We've gotten a lot of feedback that by using subgraphs, UIs are a lot more performant. So because it takes quite a lot of computation to query the blockchain, using a subgraph kind of abstracts that and makes it a lot easier. Again, the one I keep reiterating, the global decentralized API. So there's no single owner, no single access point. Anybody can use it and anybody can pay for it. And then disrupting data markets. Oops, that little typo. My favorite sort of visionary that aligns with this is Jaron Lanier, who talks a lot about how, these data markets that we're currently victims to, it's not a problem that they exist, it's a problem that we don't benefit from them. And so if we can create markets where anybody can be an indexer or a curator or earn some kind of reward for, their data that they're contributing or the work they're contributing, then it actually makes it okay. And so that is exactly what we're working towards. Oh man. Oh my God. So we're already becoming a critical part of the stack. Here's an excellent visual that I like as a non-dev to visualize what exactly is happening. So, you build smart contracts, and what's cool about, Ethereum or any blockchain community is that you don't have to be the one that built the smart contracts to also build a front-end application. And that's where something like a subgraph becomes really valuable because, one engineer can build this subgraph that indexes data from Uniswap, let's say. So all the transaction data from Uniswap contracts. And not only does the Uniswap team get to use that subgraph and query that data, but really anybody. And that's this sort of vision of like communal APIs, data, open data, the idea that not a single developer has access to that API or is controlling that API. So when we think about what it is that you can use the graph for more tangibly, really it can be any application. The ones that are most usable today in Ethereum are largely around DeFi, so wallets, exchanges, other investing apps, identity solutions, and cross-app usernames. So we actually launched a project registry called Everest, which essentially uses a subgraph of project identities, and that can then be referenced by other applications. And we're excited to see where that could go. Games, marketplaces, block explorers, price feeds, and data aggregators are probably the most common sources of querying data. And the more fruitful that our ecosystem becomes, the more important that'll be. The more sort of like Bloomberg competitors that come out, the more valuable getting data in a standardized way will be. Staking services, DAOs, and so much more. So here's just a few stats on what our current query volume breakdown is. As you can see, DeFi is definitely up there. DAOs also, there's quite a few dApps that are, sort of like DAO factories, things like DAO House, Raid Guild, Moloch. On the games and entertainment front, quite a few games and gaming marketplaces are using subgraphs to query that transaction and trade volume from the blockchain. Identity, wallets, many more. The ones I'm personally excited about are, seeing how scaling solutions are able to integrate it. Now that OVM is up and also POA, scale, being able to query, information from different side chains and different blockchains will be super exciting. And here's a list of just a few of the dApps that are already using us. There's quite a few more, and you can actually visit our website, thegraph.com/explorer, to see a lot of the high quality ones, the ones that are being used by dApps themselves, and also any of the other subgraphs that have been deployed by really anybody. And a few more visual examples. So for example, Synthetics Exchange is using a subgraph to power their app. The transactions that are made whenever someone pays for a Forbes subscription with ETH, those are being captured in an unlock protocol subgraph that's deployed on mainnet too. For Open, all their data for insurance and options trading is being queried from a subgraph, and Decentralized asset marketplace as well. Now, one of the coolest things, and I keep reiterating this sort of decentralized global open API, and the cool use case that's really tangible today is that the Uniswap subgraph is being used by both Uniswap and Rainbow Wallet. And I have to give a shout out to Mike, who's just so awesome and such a great graph champion. And he is so excited about the vision that you can query anybody's subgraph. It doesn't have to be yours. It doesn't have to be your contracts. And he actually looks at our Explorer to see what new subgraphs were built. And so that's the kind of future I envision is, we're us being able to share APIs, share data access, and make really cool applications. As I mentioned, the Graph Explorer is where you can find all these. And we also have a playground. So if you click on one of these cards, you can go to the playground of that specific subgraph. You can see the API endpoint, and you can actually make fake queries here just to play around, so you know what's going on. It's really cool data. Sometimes even if I am unsure about what might have happened in Moloch or something else, and I don't particularly want to go to Etherscan, I will go here and maybe query like, oh, what was the last vote? And so that's been pretty cool. I'm like a technical degenerate. So really, this becomes a self-sustaining model where developers build subgraphs, other developers use those subgraphs and point to them, and then those developers create other subgraphs, and so everybody's sort of using the same resources and piggybacking off them. And that's really something that was never really possible. Like Web 2 APIs are pretty gated, centralized authorities making all the money, gating it based on a certain fee, and this creates a new paradigm of sharing. And here's one of my favorite quotes by Adam, an engineering live peer. Once you start using the graph, you quickly realize the folly of building for Web 2, which forces you to recreate the wheel, server and database, learn a new set of proprietary APIs, and assume liability of user data with every new application. And I think this summarizes it so well. Like when we think about what the value of blockchains are, with the graph, we actually create a new use case, which is being able to create serverless applications, which just weren't possible before. And so I'm really excited that that's a new use case that we haven't fully explored and haven't even necessarily tested the limits of, but a lot of developers are starting to get it too. So right now, all of our users are querying their subgraphs, and those transactions and queries are being processed by our hosted service. And at the moment, we're building out our decentralized network that will be launching later this year. In the next few months, we'll actually be launching the testnet. That's an incentivized testnet, so look out for information there if you'd like to participate. But basically, the way the graph network works is you have these indexers who run these graph nodes in the graph CLI, and they process queries to subgraphs. They compete, based on which subgraphs they want to process queries for based on things like curation signal, and I'll get to that in a minute. And then they also, have query fees that they earn for processing those queries and inflation rewards. And so this creates this incentivized market of maintaining queries and indexing that otherwise might have been earned by an AWS or other centralized servers and database providers. So that's really exciting because that means you and I, really anybody can be an indexer or delegate their stake to an existing indexer to then earn benefits from this data marketplace. And curators, as I mentioned, are basically also users who get to stake their GRT on subgraphs to dictate, I think this subgraph is actually higher quality than another. And that's a good way for indexers to realize which subgraphs they should be indexing. So maybe a more tangible example is, somebody's built a Uniswap subgraph, and then the Uniswap team also deployed one, and maybe users trust the Uniswap team more, and so they'll signal more on the Uniswap subgraph. And that shows the indexers that this is probably the subgraph you want to prioritize when indexing. So a little more in depth on the crypto economics. So indexers stake their GRT tokens as collateral against their indexing activity. They earn fees in either ETH or DAI and also inflation rewards, and they choose which subgraphs to signal on. Their inflation rewards naturally are proportional to the stake over the total stake. And similarly, curators stake their GRT on the subgraphs that they think are the highest quality, have the greatest integrity, might be the most useful, and they earn a portion of query fees as well. And so this creates an incentive ecosystem, not only for indexers who might be funds or nodes or really hardcore developers, but also curators who could just be users who understand the value of the data they're getting and want to earn from that marketplace. And so basically, the graph network allows us to create these three new paradigms: curated and open APIs that are fully decentralized, a decentralized marketplace where multiple parties are able to benefit, and also query volume, incentivization of usage of our applications because the query volume drives the value. And so, I as a user, if I know, I'm trying to bootstrap the Ethereum ecosystem, I'm probably going to use more of the dApps knowing that, I might be able to benefit from it. And really that's the value proposition of a lot of our decentralized protocols, is us all benefiting from our own usage. And so I'm really excited to see how these three sort of new pillars in, Web3 and also Web 2 can change fundamentally how we see APIs and data access. And that's it. I'd love for you guys to join the decentralization movement with us. You can deploy a subgraph, so you can visit thegraph.com/docs to go through that. You can also visit thegraph.com/explore to see which subgraphs are existing. So I know you heard from Jinglin earlier from Optimism, and they actually used an existing synthetic subgraph, the same one that the synthetics team uses, to power their demo. You can also become an indexer, so reach out if you're interested in that, and you can also join our community on Discord. And here are links again. Thank you.